We're back with American Iron Podcast, episode 5. I'm Chad Ikes, Jesse Anderson, Tamara Lopes, and today we're going to talk about the bench press. Similar to our last episode on the squat, the bench press is a main movement for powerlifters, and it's actually a really good main movement for anybody that's working out for quality of life or any of that. But it is a movement that is also commonly done very poorly. Yeah, very, very poorly. Again, like we talked last time, people work what they see in the mirror, and this isn't necessarily the best thing for quality of life, for endurance, for injury prevention.
Or overall strength.
Or overall strength. So we're going to go over the bench press and show you the best way, most efficient way to do the movement that's going to work the most important muscle groups. And because everybody I know wants to bench more, we're going to help you bench more too. So Tamara's our model today. And does Jesse want to start here?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think one of the most important things is the setup. So she's using the bar to engage. Basically, biggest thing with the bench press is your butt and your shoulder blades have to be touching the whole time. As far as foot placement, I think all three of us prefer a flat foot, but you see some people will go on their toes. I think because, again, trying to be most efficient as possible, having a flat foot, you can actually use your legs, which a lot of people don't know. I don't even realize that you're supposed to use your legs.
A lot of people use just their upper body to bench press, and the bench press is a full body movement. The day after I do bench pressing, my back, glutes, hamstrings are just as sore as my back. A lot of people lay flat on the bench. Laying flat on the bench is really not a very good position for your shoulders. It actually puts them in an unsafe position, from what I think. So similar to we talked about in the squat, where you want to pinch your shoulder blades together, you're also going to do that in the bench, but you want to actually be up on your neck and have your shoulders rolled underneath you.
On your traps.
You want to be on your traps.
Right, yeah.
Yes. I physically couldn't get on my neck.
Having that pack position, so your shoulders are back here, so they don't have a lot of room. Because if you're laying flat, I mean, your shoulders can move any way. But if you are in that pack position, I mean, you're kind of stuck right there. That's one of the things that you see a lot with bench press is shoulder issues.
His shoulders are tight, so this is up against the bench right here. His shoulder can't move anywhere. He can't move forward or back. It's stable and locked in. Now do it with your shoulders out. So guys, you'll see a lot of guys do it with their shoulders out, and here's the bench still. But when he goes to press, like come down like you're gonna bench it. Now when he goes to press, his shoulder's still gonna move back and forward. It's loose, it's not tucked in there tight. So this does two things. The first thing is untuck them and act like you're pressing. So if you're down on the bench is right here. When he presses, his shoulder's actually gonna move a little back as the weight goes up, which means you're dispersing power in two directions. You want all the power going that way. So when he's tight and he's in here, everything's locked against the bench, so all of his momentum is going forward into the bench press, into the weight. But at the same time, now his shoulders are locked and stable. Similar to how we talked about the core in the squat. Well, this is like its own little core. And if everything's locked in, these bones, this joint can't move in directions that could damage it. It's all locked in tight.
Because, I mean, the shoulder girdle is pretty complex. I mean, you got muscles going every which way.
It's very complex and has an insane amount of movement, but there's always trade-offs. And the insane amount of movement, the trade-off is more injury susceptible. So the more we keep it locked in, especially as you bench heavier and heavier, less chance of injury to the shoulders.
And I think as far as, I mean, compared to like a squat or a deadlift, it's a lot more of smaller muscle groups, which if you're putting more strain on them, more likely that they get injured.
True, that's very true. I mean, people don't really usually even know what the rotator cuff muscles are, but they're very small muscles in there, and they can easily rip. And this is something we really want to avoid.
Compared to, say, a hamstring or a glute. I mean,
yeah, which is your piriformis and much other bigger, stronger muscles.
Exactly.
Okay, we're going to see Tammy she's got her shoulder blades under her. She's up on her traps. She's got her shoulders tucked. And I'm going to go ahead and have her demonstrate a bench. And look at the range of motion that she has. It's still quite long, but she's not a big woman. Okay, now go ahead and rack it. And now I want you to do a bench press like you commonly see in a gym. And I'm not sure if you can tell in this video, but her range of motion is at least 3 more inches. Because she has her shoulders out and her shoulders are falling back. She's not in an arched position.
I have pain in my shoulders.
And she actually has pain in her shoulders just from doing that. So that's another actual key to the proper bench technique. We're shortening the range of motion. Okay, now that Tammy is in her position, she's up on her traps. She's got her shoulder blades together. One of the next things she wants to do is breathe into her belly, just like we talked about in the squat. So she's pushing her belly out, and then she's going to take the weight. As you can see, she's actually pushing her abdomen out and keeping that core really tight.
Also, her shoulders are staying back.
It's going to allow her to transfer her leg drive into the bench. Plus, it keeps her from moving around on the bench, possibly injuring a joint. I always think of this as the big bus, the 2 buses that have the accordion section in the middle. And as they take off, you can usually see it go like this. Well, if she doesn't have a strong core and she gets leg drive, that power is being absorbed into her midsection. It's not being transferred into the bench. So there's 2 reasons why the core is really extremely important. Then we're going to talk about another thing. The lockout of a bench press, a lot of people will come up and go like this and push their whole shoulders forward. That's not really locking it out. Even in a technical bench, all you have to do is this. So like we said about tucking your shoulders in the beginning, the end of the bench, they're still tucked. As soon as you do this, you just put your shoulders in susceptibility for an injury. So you always want to keep them tight. That's your movement right there.
And people, I think a lot of people misunderstand is people just think of pecs and triceps for the bench press. But I mean, if done properly, you're going to be using a lot of back. I mean, keeping in that position, again, going back to that posterior chain rather than anterior chain, you're going to use that back to bring it down, almost pulling it into you. Again, with a squat, loading up that spring, being able to push out of it.
Yeah, if after a bench day your pecs are really, really sore and you didn't do a specific fly movement or something, then you're bench pressing wrong. Your back should be exhausted after a bench day though. And
My back cramps. If
Yes.
I'm in a
Yes.
correct position, my glutes, sometimes my hip flexors, and my back will cramp
Because you're firing them that much.
because I'm firing
Right.
everything at once.
Exactly.
And again, like the squat, when you come down, you're building up pressure. Don't just let the weight come down. The eccentric phase is important. It's important to get everything locked in and build pressure and tighten your muscles and tighten your muscles and tighten your muscles, and then bam, spring up out of it.
Chad, one of the things that's helped me too is think about squeezing my pinkies on the bar. And for me, that makes me engage that lat more at the bottom.
That's a good cue. I prefer to actually twist the bar like this, and then twisting the bar, I turn my elbows in a little bit, and that helps me flex my lat. Your lats are squeezed down, your shoulder blades are together, you're up on your traps, and then when you come down, generally speaking, you want about a 45-degree angle of where your arms are right here. So you're going to be something like this right here, and I'm flexing and pushing my lats out. And my lats are actually going to be the first movers off of my chest. And I say chest, but ideally you want to hit below your chest. And then so your lats are your first movers, and then followed through with your triceps up to the top.
I think even just handoff. I mean, I use my lats taking a handoff. I think of the handoff rather than like unracking it, rather pulling it out towards me like, a straight arm pull down or something like that. So I'm using those lats, trying to engage those lats, and then I've already have them flexed so I can get in that position.
And you just brought up another point. A lot of people will take it out of the rack. They'll get set up nice and tight, and then they'll take it out of the rack and go like this. And now with weight in their hands, they're trying to get into a position that they're probably not going to get back into. So when you set your rack height up, you want to be able to get in that position to just take the bar off right here, where I'm lifting it off without moving my shoulders instead of going like this and then trying to get back in.
It's very hard to get back in that position once you've extended
Once
your
you're out,
shoulder
it's
blades
really
out.
hard with weight in your arms to get back in that position.
Absolutely.
Now, leg drive. Leg drive can be a tricky thing for people to learn, but it can add a bunch of weight to your bench. Me and Tammy differ quite a bit here.
We do.
She likes to bench with her legs under. I like to bench with my legs out in front of me.
And we've both been successful.
Yes. I think we both have world records in the bench. Let's show them how you do it, and then I'll show them how I do it. See how once she comes down with you can see her actually driving her heels into the floor, and that's transferring power up into the bench. There's a few little things I prefer to do differently. Tammy comes under the bar and flexes back into her position. I prefer to start lower on the bench, and I'll squeeze my shoulders, and then I get in my position by driving myself up into this position, and then I leave my feet out in front of me, trying to drive my glutes into my shoulders. And this bench happens to be a little slippery, but I'm going to give it a shot. So basically, we just described two ways of getting leg drive. Me and Tammy can argue all day long about it, but the fact is, it works for her and it works for me. So in powerlifting, there's standards and things that you need to do, but there's always also variables too. Everybody's built different. Everybody's different mentally, physically, neurologically. Sometimes you just got to bend the rules a little bit to find what works for you. And I mean, there's multiple world records the way I do it. There's a lot of world records the way Tammy does it. And I mean, you got a guy or woman who has a world record. It's kind of hard to argue with it because apparently they know what they're doing. Otherwise, they wouldn't have got there. But that's the basics on bench pressing. I recommend everybody does a powerlifting meet. I think one of the beautiful things about powerlifting is there's novice levels. There's age groups from younger people like Jesse up to older people. I've seen 80-year-old people in 80-year-old categories on the platform, which I think is absolutely awesome.
Absolutely.
So if you are going to do a meet or you're interested in doing a meet, there are a few different rules for different federations. Some federations you can actually have your heels up. Most federations now, I think you have to have a flat foot. Some will actually vary in where you can hit. There's some competitions where we're actually hitting our upper abs instead of here because it's a more efficient movement. Some of them you have to stay above the xiphoid process. And honestly, that's all stuff you're going to learn. I mean, go to the meet. If you're a novice or new lifter, they always have rules briefings. There's always people there to help you. I've been to so many meets and seen so many new lifters, and like everybody's so surprised that everybody cheers them on. And if all the lifters there know it's your first meet, they're like, hey, everything you do is a PR. Yeah. So everybody cheers for you and wants you to do good because they want you to stay doing it. And it's something you can do for the rest of your life.
And if you are curious about doing a meet, I mean, all the federations have rule books online. I mean, use those resources. I mean, they'll go over step by step, yes, you can raise your foot, for a bench press, you can raise your head, what you're supposed to wear for deadlift. I mean, these are all things that they describe very well in the rule books that are posted online.
And you can learn those rules whether you train at home or train at the gym and start practicing them so when you do get into the meet, you're already a step ahead. And if you're interested, and especially if you're in this area, we have a lot of competitive powerlifters in this gym.
We do.
And they're more than willing to help out. So those are the very basics of the bench press. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. I hope you might be thinking about doing a meet someday. And we're going to wrap this one up for today. And I'd like to see you back Monday at 6 o'clock for our next episode where we're going to cover the deadlift. Wave goodbye, everybody.